Welcome to chapter number 7. In this chapter, we'll discuss about Cakephp form. So, by using Cakephp helper, one of the helper is form helper. By using this form helper, we can create a form, Cakephp form. We are not going to use direct HTML form tag to create form, but Cakephp provides some facilities to create form out of the box. So let's try to create a form, and that form will communicate with the database, will store data, then we'll try to update the data by using Cakephp form. So let's get started. So this is our controller. We are using the users controller. Here in this users controller, we are creating a function, public function, and the registration. This is the name of the function or action. It will render a function, a form. Okay, fine. So we have to create a registration.ctp file in your template. So this is my template. This is the users folder, that is stands for the controller, users controller. Inside the users controller, we have to create a new file. So that file should be registration.ctp, and this is my registration.ctp file. Here I want to create my own HTML form by using form helper. Okay, registration form. So this is the heading of my so if you go to your browser and if you write users registration, so it is displaying like this, registration. So now here you can start writing your form. So PHP. So here I start echo $this form. This form is a helper. Basically, it is the helper by which we can create. So this is the beginning of the form, and this is the end of the form. You just write $this form and end. This is the end of the form. Basically, what is this exactly? What is this exactly? It is the beginning of form. That means if you write like this, it will create a form like this. And if you write like this, it will create a form like this. The end of the form tag. Okay. So this is the beginning and this is the end of the form. In between these two statements, I can create my form elements. So what I want to do is, I want to create two text boxes. So $this for the name, $this form. This is the form helper. Then I want to create text box. So text box can be created by using input function, and this is the name of the field I have created in my database. So this is my name of the field I have. This is the name I have to specify here. Then another is email, and after this you can write the parameters also. Okay, so if you write an echo $this form and input, this is the email, and the second one is, last one is echo $this, just write form, then input, then the last one is the password. Okay, so this is how we can create the form. Now it is created. Now go to the browser again and refresh it. Now as you see, three text boxes are there. The text boxes are there. Okay, and here you see the password is basically password field. If the name of the field is password, then automatically it creates input type password. If you go and check it here in the inspector area, inspect this particular element. So this will you can see this is a input type password. It creates like this. Okay, so this is how you can create input type password. Why it is creating input type password? Because I have created my text box by using password. This is the field name of the field is password, so that's why it is creating input type password. Okay, so the form is created. Last one is you create a button here. You go $this form. Okay, so submit, the submit button, or you can create button like this, or otherwise you can write go to the browser again and say okay. So it is saying the end parameter must be an array, but you to do one thing, it can pass an array, but what I will do is I create a button like this, echo $this form button. This is, so this button is created, but you can also specify. You see, if you see this particular uh, button, what it is displaying actually, it is saying type is submit, input type is submit. This is submit button. You can create a submit button like this also, or the form is been created now. If you want to put something, some specific classes to these particular text boxes, you can also specify writing like this. So when you see this is the text box, and when you write this particular line number, it is creating this particular text box, and automatically it will display the label of that particular. Suppose if you want to write something else, enter your name, enter your email ID, enter your password, so you can write like this, one array, then you write label, enter your name like this, go to browser and say this. So you can write like this also. If we create suppose for example label to this particular text box is this. So if you want to write something, some class, if you want to use some class like class, some Bootstrap class if you want to use, you can also write like this, class form control. You can write like this also. So save it, go to browser, refresh it. So if you go to and see this, inspect this particular element. So if you see this element, you see the form class is basically changed. Class is form control. So this is a Bootstrap class, but I do not have the Bootstrap library linked to my application, Cakephp application. So it is not right now working. But if you want to include the Bootstrap class you have to include the library. For example, if you want to include the library here, you can, in this CTP file, you can include the bootstrap. So to include the bootstrap, what you have to do is you can write like this. So $this HTML. This is the helper HTML. Then CSS. Then you have to write the name of the file, the CSS file if you want to include. So here you see in my and the CSS file, it is referring to which folder? Suppose I have a webroot folder. This is my webroot folder outside everything. So this is webroot. So when you're writing echo HTML, the $this HTML CSS, that means it's referring to this particular folder. So inside this folder, I have another folder, Bootstrap 337. So I can write like Bootstrap 3.3.7, and inside this folder I have a dist folder. Inside the dist folder I have a CSS folder. And inside this CSS folder I have Bootstrap dot min.css. This file I require, this particular file I require. So you have to write like this. So I think it is okay. And say go to the browser again. Say refresh it now. And if you see now the Bootstrap is applicable to, you see, if you see this particular thing, HTML header. Now the Bootstrap is not there inside because the header not containing my, you see, this is my Bootstrap, HTML Bootstrap. Okay. So I have included the Bootstrap is the new cake CSS Bootstrap, and this Bootstrap is now included into my view file. Okay. So the scenario, the view changed completely because I have used my Bootstrap. Okay. So in this way you can include the Bootstrap, and in the next what we'll include this particular CSS file in our layout, not exactly this the CTP file, in this CTP file. So for overall web application website, I have to put this particular line in my layout. So now for the time being, it is now in my CTP registration.ctp file. This file and this library is included. Everything is okay. Now when I submit this form, what will happen? Let's go and check my form. When you say inspect this form and go to the form tag, you see when I submit the form, the action is the registration form, registration action, users registration, users the controller. This is the function will be called. When I put my data in the form, it will call this particular function. So let's work on this particular function. What I want to do, I want to submit some data to this particular form, and when I put some data into this form, okay, so this data should go to my database. When I submit, it will call the registration function of mine. So this is the registration function controller. This is the registration function. So this function basically rendering or displaying the HTML form, the registration form. So I'm writing one thing: if $this request is post. What is this? If the if the form is submitted, request is post means if the form is submitted, what will happen? I want to see what are the data has been entered to my registration form. So $this request data. So this is what is exactly the form data. That is $_post data. Exactly this is the post data. So if you see, if the form is submitted, refresh it now. I am putting some data to my the method post is not exists. Controller is post. Sorry, is the method post. Go to browser. Now 54. Not this. Now this is the form. I am writing testing, and password is testing@gmail.com, and this is the password. Testing. Form submit. Now you see the data is coming like this. So why it is displaying? Because I have this particular statement. It is displaying the data I have entered in my form. So now what you have to do is you have to store this data in the database. So the point is to comment it out. Now this is the data coming from the form, and I want to put this data into my database. So how to put the data into database? So to store something in the database, we require model. We require entities. So model and entities, model is basically representation. This is the model we have. Just leave controller, we have another model here. So model have table and entities. Table basically representation of your database table. So we do not have a table right now. So we'll create this table and we'll store the data in the database. Okay. So entity represents the record, one single record in the table, database table, and table represents the entire table in the database. So we'll create this table and entities by using your Cakephp. Then we'll store the data in the database. Now to store the data in the database, we have 3 steps. So what are the steps? Create a new empty row in the model. Model means table. Okay. So create that $this. You just write something, some variable like user variable. This is a new variable. $this. I want to create. I'm creating a new empty row in this users table. Dollar this users, this is the table name, new entity. So this is new entity means, as I told you, entity means a row. I'm creating a new row. Create new or new row. Okay. So this is how you are creating a new row. Now after submission of this form, this is how is post means, if the form is the post, form is the posted, the form is posted, then I want to, this is an empty row, I want to put some data into this particular row. So that is a paging of page entity. So what I have to do is dollar this into the empty row. Okay, so dollar this user is the table name. Now page entity, so this is the page entity, and this function is basically storing your form data into this. This is how, this is the empty row. In this empty row I am putting my data that is coming from the form. Okay, so dollar this request data. So this is the data coming from the form. I'm putting this particular data into this empty row. Now everything is okay. Now I'm putting, now if write, if I want to store this row into my database permanently, so dollar this users, then this is the inserting command. It is save command. It will insert the data into the database permanently. If it is saved, and if it is not saved, if the data is saved, then it should display some error message. So the message successful, this flash success, then data saved, then this is how you can create this message to display. Then it should rewrite to somewhere else, otherwise you can stay here. If there is an error, you can also put this flash, just like a success. You can also create another, error, just like this. You can also create errors also. The error functions also there. Error database error, put like this. So what exactly you are doing actually, I am just creating a new empty row by creating new entity method, and when the form is submitted, if the form is submitted, the data is there, then I am putting my form data into the empty row, fetching the page data, page entity. Then this line basically it is storing the data in the database permanently. Okay, then the message is there. So I've created two messages, flash. So registration.ctv file, go to the registration.ctv file and show this message. So if you want to display the message above this particular form, you just write echo $this flash render. We'll discuss this thing later in this chapter, how to manage the the messaging system inside your application. So we can discuss all this thing in future classes, but this is how it will display the message inside your HTML CTP file. So go to browser again. So this is your browser, and this browser is basically displaying your form, importing some data. John at yahoo.com. The password is John, and say OK. Now data is saved. Go to the browser again. This is the database, and you see the data has been saved here. John is there. Okay, put another. So this is how you can store data. Very easily you can store data. The data is being stored. Now I'm putting some other data. Smith and Smith at yahoo.com. Now the password is Smith, and say OK. Okay. So if you go to the database and see the data has been inserted here, Smith, and here I want to create a link to go to my get data. So I have created get data dot CTP file. It is displaying this. So what I want to do is I want to put my data in the form, and when submitted it should come to this particular redirect to particular this page. So if you want to do like that, what you have to do is go to the browser, go to the controller. This is the success. If the form data is saved, then it will redirect to a particular page. So redirect, then redirect is a function. Basically it is just like header location in our PHP action, and I want to go to the get data. I want to redirect to our data. Okay, fine. So go to the browser again, and here in get data I want to create a button. When I click that, it will show me the registration form. So get data. So here after this I want to create a button here, you create a button at the top of this thing. You can create a button. Create a button like this. Echo $this. Okay, and button is basically a form. It is a form element. I say it is HTML element. BUTTY. Or you can see, you can write like this also. HTML link. I'm creating a link here. A new user. Okay, and here when I click here, it should go to controller. The current controller is user controller, so it will go to the user's controller, and the action is registration. Action is registration. registration. Okay, so the button, the link has been created. Go to the browser again, refresh it. Now add new user. So when you click here, it is displaying this, and when I enter some data, Albert, at gmail.com and Albert, and say OK. Don't save. Now it is redirecting to my page. So in this way, you can go to a particular page. This is your registration form. From when you submit, it will go to your get data.php file. So in this way, you can store data. In the next session, next chapter, we'll try to find out how to encrypt this password and how to validate the form and how to create different other elements of form, just like radio button, checkboxes, drop down, all these things. So till then, bye bye. Thank you.